This entitled mum is about to use the generosity of a woman against her, even though she was kind to her son. Will there be any justice in a world filled with entitled parents? Happy birthday if today's your birthday, and on with the revamped show. I think Reddit may have created a monster in me. Ever since I found this sub, I've been dying to relay stories of my entitled brother, his wife, her mother, and their kids, K1 and K2. The more I think back, the more crap I seem to dig out from my subconscious, as I've been making a concerted effort over the years to repress a lot of it. Every time I finish a story, my dear husband says, "Oh, what about, don't you remember when he..." So it's a never-ending cycle of story after story, but with the glory of the interwebs, I now have an outlet to vent. It was right before K1's 6th birthday, and entitled brother and sister-in-law wanted to throw him a birthday party. K1 voiced that he really wanted to go bowling, complete with hot dogs, cake, ice cream, presents, and all of his little friends in attendance, so they can have a fun afternoon. This sounded wholesome and fun. I remember my past birthdays involving bowling and having a blast, so I happily obliged when my entitled brother called me to ask for a bit of help from me and my dear husband. The only concern was that I was working that Saturday, but had arranged with the co-worker to switch shifts so I could attend. Thankfully, co-worker is a father himself and understood the need for me to take this particular Saturday off. I knew my entitled brother and sister-in-law were very badly struggling financially, and naturally they still wanted to show their little one a good time with all of his friends. To help ease the burden, my dear husband, who also arranged for a day off from work, and I offered to bring a cake and supply the grab bags, mini bags usually full of dime store candies, and small toys that are distributed upon the kids' departure from the party. There were 10 kids confirmed, which meant that the bags alone and their contents would be $50 to $70 in total, if you included the cost of the bags and the cake ingredients. Since store-bought cakes are often expensive and taste like crap, especially if purchased from a grocery store chain, I opted to bake a chocolate cake from scratch, per K1's wishes. My husband and I weren't rich by any means. This was several years before the inheritance came to be, and we were both still early in our careers, with one of us taking PT classes at the same time. But we felt between us we could definitely aside a maximum of $100 towards this little shindig. My sister-in-law jumped at the offer and gave us the details. The night before the party, I made the scratch cake and decorated it with sprinkles and colorful icing, complete with "Happy Birthday, K1" scrawled on the top in bright blue decorating gel. It wasn't a Rembrandt or Picasso, but it looked pretty fancy and nice, and it was tasty. And most kids aren't terribly concerned with particulars about how fancy a cake looks. They just want to eat it and get that sugar rush. Meanwhile, my dear husband was filling the treat bags, 10 bags containing a small assortment of candy, a toy whistle, and a clacker toy. We even made 2 extra ones in case there was an extra surprise kid or 2, or if one of the kids had a little sibling at home and they didn't want them to feel left out. We were set. The next afternoon, my husband and I carefully loaded the cake and grab bags into the car and made our way to the bowling alley, close to entitled brother and sister-in-law's place, so roughly a 30-minute drive away. EB and sister-in-law were already there, as well as the sister-in-law's mother. This alley hosts birthday parties on the regular, and they have a room set up in the back for such an occasion. We carefully carried the cake and bags to the room, ensured the girl behind the counter started the hot dogs. They were cooked on rotating spokes in a glass display and took quite some time to heat up to a proper temperature, and we waited for the kids to arrive. Within about half an hour of arriving, 10 kids showed up, along with some parents, making it 12 kids if you included K1 and his brother K2, and about 6 adults. Great turnout. We herded the kids to the shoe counter, where they all got their bowling shoes. After helping them lace up, we hit the lanes. All of the adults opted to sit back and watch, and 2 of the kids didn't bowl. One had a cast on his wrist, and the other simply didn't want to bowl. I think he was there just for the cake, but they were amazingly well behaved and were content with just sitting on the bench, watching their friends chuck balls down the lanes. After about an hour, we called the kids to the back room for hot dogs, cake, and presents. Thankfully, this went off without a hitch. After everyone had their fill, bowling resumed. Once the 3rd game was done, about another hour later, it was time for the kids to leave. My dear husband handed each kid their grab bag, which was welcomed with a huge "Thank you, mister," and everyone was happy. Or so I thought. Dear husband and I started gathering up paper plates, while EB returned the bowling shoes to the counter. Then came the time to pay. Thankfully, K1 and his brother were sitting at one of the tables playing with toys, away from the adults so they couldn't hear the ensuing conversation. "All right," said the fellow from behind the counter. "That's a bowling package for 12 kids at $6 each. I'll only charge you $3 for the 2 kids who didn't bowl to cover their hot dog and pop. So that comes to $66, please." No one moved. I looked at dear husband. Dear husband looked at EB. EB looked at sister-in-law. And sister-in-law and her mother were both shooting daggers at me and dear husband. Well, what? Aren't you going to pay the man? For what? We already made the cake and the grab bags. You're expecting us to foot the bill again for something? Well, isn't that what you promised to do? You said you were going to pay. I said we would cover the cake and the gift bags for the kids. Well, the cake was homemade. You cheaped out on the cake. So you may as well put the extra towards the bowling. Why are you trying to cheap out on this whole thing and go back on your promise and break a little boy's heart? Like hell we will. We did our part. You can take some responsibility for once, while pointing to all 3 of them. "K1, come here please." K1 trots over. "Yeah?" "Auntie and uncle don't want to pay for your birthday party." K1 was hugging my dear husband's legs. "But auntie and uncle brought cakes and presents. I thought you, dad and grandma were taking us out." It took every ounce of willpower to not burst out laughing. EB's face turned beet red with embarrassment, and sister-in-law was visibly flustered. "Did you have a good time, K1? "Yes, I had so much fun bowling and playing and being with friends and eating cake and—" I laughed and gave him a big hug. Okay. Listen, kiddo, we have to go, but you give us a call later tonight. Happy birthday." "Okay, thank you for the cake." Kids' priorities, huh? And with that, my dear husband and I turned on our heel and walked out, leaving the remaining adults to hash it out. K1 called me later that evening and we briefly chatted, but he was winding down from his sugar rush, so the call was short. I never did end up finding out how my entitled brother, sister-in-law, and his mother-in-law handled everything afterwards, but that was one of the few times I left him hanging and feeling really good about it. Entitled parents can be rich or poor. It doesn't really make a difference. But in this particular situation, they used the fact that they didn't have much money to make the assumption that the hero of our story and her dear husband should be the ones to pay for everything. And that's the problem with someone who's entitled. Even when you're generous and you give them something, like they offered to make the cake, which again, it's pretty sad that they didn't value the time that they went in to make a cake from scratch. That wasn't enough for them. They felt entitled to more. I am a runner, and a quick one of the fastest in my club, and I run for my county. I also have a year's worth of running and volunteering under my belt, so I am a well-respected runner and my name within the club. Anyway, one day I was at training and a kid turns up, and he looks like he would rather be locked in a room for a day than be there for an hour. His dad rushes him into the hut and talks to the coach. I didn't hear this, so I'm not sure what happened. He comes out in these odd running shoes, no padding, and looks like his granddad gave them to him. Very uncomfortable looking shoes. Anyway, we finished training and he was lagging behind in all of them and was visibly not able to meet the requirements of what his dad was trying to get him to do, which was long distance. About a month later, after not seeing him, I noticed this kid at a race of mine, 10k. Me and my running buddy look at each other and knew there was going to be a low result for someone, or even a did not finish. We overhear the dad prepping his son, saying things like, "You're one of the best runners here," and "You are gonna beat these newbies." But me and my running buddy shook it off. The race begins and we start running, and the kids start off way too fast. He is ahead of the pack by 100 meters or more, and his dad is howling at him to go faster, son. But what his dad did not hear was everyone, including the runners around me, mumbling how it was clear he was sprinting and how he was going to wreck himself. Not even 10 minutes in and we have passed him. I am leading in my age category and my buddy is in another category, so I don't have to worry about him. And the kid, you guessed it, was out of sight and not to be heard from the entire race, so I thought. The race was lovely. Muddy hills, puddles, streams. I loved it. And as I'm finishing, I am with the leading pack of adults. Now of course everyone semi-sprints or uses their fastest jog their way to the finish, except me, as I've put my heart and soul into this race, only to be blocked by this massive dude. I skid to a halt and almost slam into him. My head is up to his chest, so he was towering over me. The race marshals and the race director come over and try and get him off the course. Here is where the conversation starts. We have the entitled dad, the race marshals, the race director, and me. "Do you mind moving? You are blocking the finish and stopping others from finishing. By this time, another adult was beside me as well, while the race director and race marshals are fighting to get this guy off the course. No, my son has trained very hard for this race, and I'm not going to let newbies like him beat him. Oh my gosh, move. I begin shoving, but this guy is a unit. If this guy played rugby, he would be a star at it. No, my son is finishing before you. I'm not gonna move out the way. Sir, do you mind moving out the way? You are now disturbing the flow of the race. No, my personal best. My son deserves to be recognized for his talent. He is going to be on the top of the results because he is better. The time had ticked by and I was now being clocked in for 42 minutes, which is a minute behind my personal best. I break down crying. I had worked so hard only to get it ruined by some jerk trying to make his kids seem better. But what I missed was a person watching the race had managed to get through the railing and was storming over to the man. The next thing I know, the man was on the floor and I scrambled over him to finish. I can now officially say that I finished a race on my hands and knees and finished with a time of 43 minutes and 12 seconds. Turns out the guy that shoved him was a Nick who was a lot faster than me and had finished and seen what had happened and had headbutted or shoved him over. If you're an athlete, which I most definitely am not, you have to put a lot of work into your training. It's not just that he put a lot of effort into that particular marathon, it's the hours and hours and hours of training, probably every week, to get to that point. I can only begin to imagine the pain of being right near the end of the race, so close to your personal best, to have it taken away by an entitled person. And it wasn't even really for himself, it was because he, supposedly, was doing it for his son. I mean, who would want to win that way anyway? It's just so embarrassing. So, to start off with, where I live, there is a great park at the bottom of my road, so every day I take my dog down to play. On this particular day, we decided to go down to the park after a nearby nursery had finished, and naturally, all the children want to play with my dog, and is naturally very popular. But it's just great because he loves children, and whilst he's playing, I notice a woman, who is the entitled parent, trying to put a lead on him. So I go up to her, and this is how the conversation went. Excuse me, why are you trying to put a lead on my dog? Oh, well, he's off his lead, and I figured he was abandoned, so I thought I'd take him home with me. Wait, what? I have his lead right next to me, and I'm literally 2 feet away from him. So can you take the lead off him now? My daughter loves him, so why not let us take him with us? We have another one of these dogs anyway. It was a husky. Look, lady, you can't take other people's dogs just because you want to. I want this dog and I'm going to take him home. He doesn't deserve an owner like you who would just abandon him at the drop of a hat. You can't be serious, right? I am literally taking him for a play in the field. What are you talking about? I am going to breed him with my own husky and he'll have a happy life with me. So just give him to me already. Are you freaking insane? No, you cannot take my dog. If you want to breed your dog, then buy another dog to breed it with, not mine. Other parents and children are around me, and I figured if I leave, she'll just rant and rave to herself before going home. So I then go to take the lead off and put mine back on, and then exit the park, and I thought she'd leave it at that, but oh no. She then follows me back to my house whilst screaming and ranting that I've stolen her dog and shouting for help. This was so shocking to me that I literally froze for a few seconds before I continued walking back to my house. I went inside only to have her banging furiously at my front door demanding I give her back the dog, and that I don't deserve an animal, and a few other random insults that I can't quite remember. I eventually opened the door and explained that if she doesn't leave my property, I will call the police. And after screaming and shouting a bit more, she eventually realizes that I'm being serious and leaves. Phew, all over. Well, not exactly. A couple of days later, I receive a visit from the RSPCA stating that I have a dog that is extremely malnourished and was being abused, so they asked to see the dog. Of course, I allowed them to inspect him, and the person literally says to me that he is in perfect health and that he is a lovely dog. I thank him and he leaves and says nothing further will happen in this case. Thank God. Side note, after retelling this story, it only just dawned on me that this lunatic had a dog lead with her and no dog. I seriously hope her dog was at home. That sounds like one of those things you only realize later, where you look back and you're like, wait a minute, why did she have a dog leash but no dog? Regardless of the context, the fact that she was trying to steal a dog dog just makes her a crazy person. But it almost reminds me of like a sitcom where one of the characters for some bizarre reason has to do something crazy, like steal a dog, and you never think about how it affects the other characters. I guess this is what it would kind of be like, although I doubt she had any reasonable excuse for trying to steal a dog. This was one of those crazy stories. One day, I had to go do some works at the city hall, and on my way back to the office, I stopped my car in a parking from a store just to answer a call. I was inside of my car. There was no car parked around me, and all places were available to park a car. At least 15 places available. While I'm on the phone, the entitled mother arrives with her car and decides to park right next to me. Really close to me. I guess she thought the car needed company? I don't know. I don't mind at the time until I hear and feel a huge bang on my car. So this lady basically parked the car, she gets out and takes the kid out. She decides to bang the door with major force against my car door. Of course, I stop the call, get out of my car and tell her, "Excuse me, you just damaged my door." "Oh, sorry, I have a kid. These things aren't easy." "Well, I'm sorry too, but it's damage and you must take responsibility." The entitled mother turns her back on me, goes inside the store. The kid runs after her. I lock my car and follow her. "Excuse me, you can't simply damage someone's car and walk away." "Listen, I have a child. These things happen. It's not a big deal." To be honest, if she was humble and just assumed her mistake like a grown woman, I could simply accept that, maybe. It was a big bit of damage, but I still might have considered that. However, she was a jerk. Listen, I know dealing with children can be hard. However, you still need to accept responsibility by your mistakes. "I am a mom. I have lots of damage on my car, and I don't go after people." "That's not my problem. My insurance doesn't cover mommy damages." "You are scaring my child." The kid was a bit confused, but not really scared. He was checking out toys from the store. He was quite entertained. And also, I wasn't screaming. She was. I work hard to get my things, and I don't want my car to be damaged. What you do with your property, it's on you. Mine, it's on me. Let's exchange insurance information and not make a big deal out of this. She started screaming I didn't understand how hard it was having kids, and I could easily pay the damages myself. I tried to reason with her and she grabs her kid and says that she can't control him. "Why did you decide to park next to me with so many spaces available?" She went full Sheldon and said, "I like that spot." I know several mums that would never have this behavior, so yeah, she was the crazy one. I ended up going to the police. Moral of the story, make sure your insurance covers mummy damages. It sounds like the mother in this story has had people damage her car and she's been pretty passive about it, and so she's just been like, whatever, I don't really care that much. But just because you don't care about your property doesn't mean the damage you cause other people doesn't matter. I mean, the guy has a very live and let live attitude. He's like, you can do with your car whatever you want, but when you damage my car, then it actually does matter. You do have to do something about it. Entitled people have no sense of other people's property rights, and yet they always have the nerve to call other people selfish. Submit your story to be read on the channel at voiceyherestories@gmail.com and join our Voicey veteran community at r/VoiceyHere. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. Alright, Voicey veterans, I'll see you in the next one.